Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat with Girija. My name is Girija Patel. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I am a podcaster. I am an educator. I am a businesswoman. I am an entrepreneur, and I'm a lawyer. I truly believe in the power of mentorship through storytelling, and that's what Law Chat is all about. So whether you are in 6 months or 10 years of business experience, we can all learn from each other's experiences because we face the same challenges and we have the victories and we have mistakes that we're all making. So why not lean into them and know that we're going to be fine and we're going to be okay and we're going to be inspired. And of course, this is Law Chat with Girija, so we will be talking about some law at some point during the conversation. And if you love what you hear today, which I know you will, then subscribe to Law Chat with Girija and share the love. So grab your coffee, sparkling water, or wine, and let's dive in to the next inspiring mentorship session. Hi, friends. Welcome to Law Chat. Have you ever heard, is there a Rembrandt in your closet? Yes, I know that's a crazy question, maybe, and you might be like, what are you even talking about? Well, my guest today asked the exact same questions to her clients because you never know what assets you might be having sitting behind a colorful picture, might be a beautiful Rembrandt. I always envision movies that are out there. But today's guest is Erin Austin. She is a consultant. She is a lawyer, and whose 25 plus years of experience has led her to focus on helping her clients identify and understand their assets, and then also how to protect those assets. I am so thrilled to have you, Erin. Thank you so much. I was telling you earlier, I love talking to lawyers. I just love nerding out on law also. I feel like sometimes I'm such a solo show that I don't get to get that part of myself out. So I just really enjoy that. But I also love that you have broken away from the traditional legal lifestyle of practicing law. I've done that too. I still practice law, but it's not your traditional suited, booted in the office type of situation. And I love talking to other fellow attorneys who've done that because it just shows that there's so much more creativity, even in the most uncreative or considered uncreative practices and industries out there. So, how did you get here? Where did it all start? I'm just wanting to really dig into all of that right now.
I want to just comment on something about you said about not being suited. I have not worn a suit since 1995. When I went in-house at Warner Brothers. I started my career at a corporate law firm, had to wear suits and pantyhose and the whole thing. And so I go to Warner Brothers. It's my first day there. And I walk in wearing a suit and pantyhose. And one of the women there just looked at me and said, "What are you wearing?" I was like, and that was the last suit and the last pantyhose that I wore.
Can we talk about the pantyhose for just 5 seconds? Back in late 90s and early 2000s, I was in undergrad at UT Business School. We had to wear pantyhose for our interviews. I remember not wearing them all the time because I'm like, it is so freaking hot in Austin. I'm like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And then you go into court and there are judges that actually notice whether you're wearing a freaking pantyhose or not. And I'm like, why are you looking at my legs? You should be the law right now.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I can imagine. I mean, if you're law firm, litigator, all that stuff. I mean, I don't know what they're doing now. Maybe they're still wearing pantyhose. I don't know. But
it really depends on the courts. Some courts are very traditional. Some courts are women can wear pantsuits.
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go. I'm like, we're still in circa God knows what year, but okay.
Oh, that is so funny. So no, I have not had a traditional career in some time, in-house for about a decade in the film business. So that's kind of started my intellectual property journey. And since then, I have been mostly self-employed. I'm working still with some film clients, market research, publishing. And so I've just stayed in that kind of intellectual asset space all this time. And, I've been lucky enough to have some like, big clients that have worked with me all these years, on retainer basis or on a per project basis. So I have escaped kind of that traditional hourly billing
Yeah.
thing that pretty much everyone hates. And been working from home. I've been working from home since 2004. And, I remember when I first moved here, I live in a kind of rural area where I do not have fiber to my house. And at the time, I only had dial-up. And I had a client who wanted me to review a film library. And so they had all these agreements. And I'm like, can you just put them on a disc and FedEx them to me? Because it would have been easier. It was easier for me to get them by FedEx than to get them over the internet. So that's been an evolution. I can now get things over the internet. Which is
So funny.
So I can have this conversation with you. So, but so since, the last 15 years, working with a variety of clients, helping them protect their intellectual assets. But those were all big companies. And so my more recent journey is, I'm like, okay, I've been doing this for some time. I know how to, help big companies make more money. Like, what can I do to help the economy work for more people? And that was kind of where my inquiry started with, like, how can I use what I know to help more people that I care about, kind of for more economic justice. And so for me, that has come to helping female founders of B2B services businesses understand the wealth that's in their businesses. When you're a B2B provider, you don't have widgets or, things like that. You have your services, you have your expertise. And a lot of us, myself included, like, we sell our expertise, but we aren't actually understanding the assets that are in our business. So the assets in a service-based business are intellectual. So that's been my bridge from kind of the traditional IP space of film and publishing to the intellectual asset space of the service-based business, the expertise-based business. So now I work with female founders to help them identify those assets in their business, make sure that they are actually building those assets. And so that at the end of the day, when they've had a wonderful career and they're ready to do something different, whether it's retiring or just the next challenge, it may not be retiring, it could just be another challenge, that they have something that they can sell. And so that next challenge is funded by what they've been doing all these years. So that's what I'm working on now.
That's so fantastic. And I think you're really filling a gap that a lot of us don't know about or think about, especially even in the beginning stages of a business. I feel like a lot of times people discount what value they're creating. It may not be the most amazing product or, content, but it is content and it is information that you are sharing and you have created. And therefore it gets the stamp of intellectual property.
It does.
And so I think what you're doing is so important. But I'm going to kind of rewind a little bit and talk to you a little bit more about your beginning stages. I love that you were at, Warner Brothers. I think I get so fascinated with every person that I've talked to who has either worked for Disney or Universal or something like that. Like, I'm just like, that just seems like dream world to me. So how was it?
Well, they employ a lot of people, so they're very big companies. Yeah.
But how was, I know when you first walked in, I think that speaks volumes about their corporate culture. Also, when they saw you in a suit, like, what are you doing?
Well, I will say that was one of the hippest women I've ever met in my life who said that to me, but it was definitely.
Yeah. I don't know. Did she become your mentor eventually, or was she something like that of yours? Or
no, I mean, we were pretty contemporary. We went to the same law school. She's a couple years ahead of me, and she's still in the film business. She still lives in LA. I am now in Northern Virginia, where I'm from, and in the film business, and has continued to rise up the ranks. But I'm not, in LA anymore. So
yeah. I guess, when you got there and already you're like, you're going to be out of the normal of what law is about. But were there any challenges that you faced in the beginning stages of before you even, started going into just identifying intellectual property and assets for bigger companies? What were some of the things that you were like, this is awesome? Or where it essentially kind of helped you evolve into that ultimate focus of yours?
Yeah, well, fortunately, there are some industries that really can understand the value of having lawyers and that they're involved in every part of the business and they're not considered like the no department, And the film business is one of those. I mean, everyone's a lawyer basically in the film business except for the writers and directors, honestly. So it's a really great place to come in house and really have that expertise valued. But there are definitely other industries, and I work with some, where the lawyers are kind of the enemy. Like if you can avoid the lawyers, do it because they will kill your deal. They will, and just give them as much information as you think they need so that they don't get into your business. And that's a real challenge when you have that siloing happening. And that happens still, which I would think, considering the fact that, over the last, I'm going to guess here, 30 years, that the value in the marketplace from like maybe 50 years, from manufacturing, where mostly value was in equipment and buildings and things like that, whereas now like 80 to 90% of the value, like in the SP, 100 is all intellectual.
Yes.
So like there should not be any business anymore who doesn't get how important their intellectual assets are and therefore how important their lawyers are. But there still is a lot of resistance to getting so yeah, it's been that, I am your ally. I am here to help you and not to stop you if I think that where you're going isn't the right direction, I will have another suggestion for you. I'm not going to just say no.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that's a struggle that a lot of lawyers have in-house, is making sure people understand the value of those intellectual assets.
I hate to interrupt this awesome conversation, but I have to stop and talk with you about the number one thing I'm asked about by entrepreneurs: contracts. They're vital to any business relationship and to protect your business. But I also know that entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting up, money is tight. But I would never want you to compromise on a strong legal foundation. So enter yourcontractbuddy.com, a website created by me with contract templates created and drafted by me and fellow industry partners. They're ready to use and easy to plug in immediately. And they are not restricted to any specific state. So yourcontractbuddy.com is sponsoring this episode, and you and your listener can get 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. Yes, you heard me right. 10% off right now with code LAWCHAT. And now back to our awesome conversation. Yeah, I think even working as not in-house, but a pseudo in-house,
Mm-hmm.
because, they're hiring like me for their business law stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that can be a struggle because it's like the understanding of how law is integrated into your business. It's not something you just kind of, it doesn't pop up. It's already started. You just,
right.
And that's the whole point of my business also, is to like strategize and integrate law in such a way where you're positioning yourself for success rather than in a way where you're just scrambling later on and spending tons of money and tons of stress for no reason.
Yeah.
And so, I can see that.
And, I still see, among the smaller businesses that aren't using, contracts still. And they, like, well, I don't know if they think I'll deal with it later, or, I have these relationships, therefore I don't need them. But, again, intellectual assets are legal constructs, right? So if you don't have an agreement in place, then, you have to have them. And so understanding, even the smallest business, doesn't need to be 100-page agreements, which we've all looked at, right? But it can be very simple and doesn't have to be scary.
So you've said two really important things. One, the intellectual property is probably the most important thing that is now being offered in most service-based businesses. And most service-based businesses was comprising the majority of the biggest businesses in the world. I can say that too, I think. And because everything is so tech-based, everything is so, it's not hard materials. Like we're not selling steel. We're not doing that. Like normal people aren't doing that. So,
right. Just a few.
And another thing is that with intellectual property, a lot of us don't realize that we're creating that from the beginning. And a contract is the only way you can ensure ownership of it or to transfer ownership of it. And people don't realize that. Like you can't verbally do that. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah. 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 I'll tell you a story about a web designer. So really, great relationships. So he used, I can't recall what the subcontractor was. I think it was a graphic designer. So he has a big project. He creates this website for his client. The client's very happy, transfer all of the intellectual property rights in the website to me. Great, except he didn't have an agreement with the graphic designer. So guess what? He didn't have the rights to transfer to the end client. End client was pretty unhappy, as you can imagine. And so that is why it's just, if you don't have a written agreement, then that graphic designer actually owns what they created, not you, and you don't have the rights to send them on to your client. So yeah.
Exactly. And I think, with the advent of all of these service-based companies such as Canva, or I don't even know, like all these places where you're creating on their platforms, it's so important to read the terms and conditions. And literally just scroll down to IP if you need to. Like just know who owns what. And if you have even a license to be able to use one of their fonts even to sell a product at the end of the day, because you're creating product on there to sell or to distribute for yourself.
Right.
So use it. Can you use it in a way that's authorized or not?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Now, very few people read the terms and conditions. The other thing in there is, if it's something where you store personal data, can you get it up? Like who owns it? What can they do with it? Sometimes it'll say, we can, aggregate it to do certain things with it. And you just want to make sure that you understand what's being done with the things that you're storing on that third party site as well.
Yes. So, I think Facebook was really notorious about this in the beginning. And I can't recall now, that there was this thing in there where they were able to use anything that you post. Inadvertently, you're giving them authorization to use it for their marketing purposes. And
really, I will say I don't know. I know almost nothing about Facebook, and happily, I know very little about Facebook. But I have heard, I've heard very.
Oh my goodness. So I love that, this is one of the challenges that lawyers face, like in their industry. They're, considered the bad guy. I totally get it. Like, and I love how you even said they're like the dream breakers sometimes. Yeah. It's really not that. It's just like, we're just giving you the worst case scenario. Right. It can happen, God willingly. But like, the idea is to protect yourself in the process of the worst case scenario. But what are some of the challenges you faced as you were also evolving in your career? And how did you overcome those challenges?
Well, I will say this. I've been practicing law for 30 years and the world has changed somewhat, I hope, in that time. But there have been times over the years where, as a woman, I can't say whether or not as a woman of color as well, but there's often where I was the only woman in the room. And, let's say you're at a closing, or something, you're, at a travel for business, and that, the guys would go out and do stuff together, but I didn't get invited to those things. And so and obviously that bonding experience is important. I definitely felt the difference, like that they knew each other way better and way more comfortable with each other than they were with me. And so in that, I was blessed with really great bosses, like really great bosses. So I never felt disadvantaged in that way. But I did feel kind of a certain amount of exclusion, which obviously DEI now, it's a different world, but it is a fairly recent one. So so that's been, I would say that would be the thing.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, as you would feel like you're not part of the group, or it could sometimes even affect your work product, not in a way where your competency, but just your mood, even wanting to get something done. Like the simplest forms of like how it could impact you. But how did you overcome that? Like what were some of the things that you used in your toolbox to say, you know what, I don't care, whatever, I'm just going to keep moving forward, because you clearly did that.
Yeah. Well, you do need to keep moving forward. I mean, again, I mean, at the time, there was not a process or even a vocabulary to talk about. There was not a vocabulary to talk about inclusion. And if there wasn't discrimination, which was, then it was okay. And there wasn't that, at least overtly. And so, I was never angry about it. I mean, everyone inside the workplace, things were fine. And, I did my job. I did a good job. And, but it's carried with me, obviously, as I, kind of move forward in my career, that you think about these things. So when you are in a position to make a difference, that for me has been what helps me, is like, okay, now I know. And now, even with my work, particularly with female founders, is kind of understanding the differences about the way women do business sometimes from men, and kind of the emotional aspect that is sometimes more there with women than with men, and focusing on that. It's not that I don't work with men, because I do, but my conversation and my thought leadership is about the emotional aspects of running and selling a business.
I like that you brought up the emotional aspect. I actually wanted to talk to you about that as well. And I'm going to touch on that in just a second. But before we get there, I wanted to also ask you about is when you were working with big companies and working with their intellectual assets, were you working for a law firm at that time, or were you working for yourself at that time?
Either in-house, and that's either film business, publishing, or market research. And then also as Erin Austin Law, which is my law practice, I also have done that. So working for myself. So
that's awesome.
Both, yeah.
So now the shift from big companies and to your own practice, how did that shift happen? And was it scary?
Yeah, it wasn't scary, but it only because I still have the big clients. So, so I didn't give them up, but I have changed my focus.
So there you go.
So really, I kind of have I'm kind of running two businesses at the moment. So again, I've got Erin Austin Law, who has my big company clients. And then I have Think Beyond IP. And so that is what my new project, which is a combined legal and consulting, because we're really working on the whole business. And the Think Beyond IP piece is because I think people think IP and it's kind of almost limiting to them. Like, well, I don't have a book and I don't have software, so I don't have anything, but there are all these other assets that you have that aren't, the things that you register at the trademark office or at the patent office, but there are all these things that are still very valuable. And so I think Beyond IP, it's where we talk about, like, do you have a Rembrandt in your attic? Do you really understand what you have? Let's dig in to see, like, do you have some sort of framework or some data or some insights or relationships? Like, all these things are valuable, but they need to be protected. They need to be identified and protected. And so that transition for me has been, again, I do have the security of my old firm, but it has been a completely different experience for me in, developing that thought leadership. My legal practice has all been referral based, and to get the first incoming inquiry from someone that you don't know at all, have no relationship with, just based on, they heard you on a podcast or read something you wrote, like, that is like, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal. And it's not easy, but it also shows how much people are craving. Like, ultimately, they want to protect themselves and their business. And especially in the world today where the internet is so vastly available and anybody can use all the tools that are available to them and literally create something almost identical to yours. The copycat world is pretty big today. And so it does stress out creators. It does stress out like all the content creators that are out there. Like, what you were saying, a lot of times people think of copyright or, intellectual property or trademark, and they're thinking, oh, a movie, a book, something like we're traditionally what we see, like a painting,
Right. Mm-hmm.
but there's so much more to like assets of intellectual property that go beyond the movies and the books. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I love that you're actually bringing that out there. And so how did you decide that, you know what, I want to help women, I want to help small businesses, and I want to do something beyond what I'm also doing right now. How did you come to that junction?
Yeah, well, I mean, it started with kind of when I think about what people are doing, and I mean people with a lot of money are doing with their wealth, and how people with even less, but are more connected to their communities and what they do when they have wealth. And in particular, what women do, that, women are more likely to give more to their communities, to their churches, to their families. So when they have wealth, they do pretty wonderful things with it. It really is spread around more. And that some people use it to go to the moon, and so I'm like, I want to focus on the people who want to use wealth to help communities and their families and things like that. And so that is why I decided to focus on, female founders of kind of small to medium-sized businesses. And because I think that has the kind of the exponential benefits too. If there's a change I want to see in the world. And I think that the best way for that change to happen is to get more wealth in the hands of women. That's, and so that is who I am. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I know that you were talking about bringing the emotional aspect to your services, because ultimately I agree with you. You cannot take the emotion out of the business because it's your baby, especially for small business owners. So how do you really, wrap up your services with the emotion also? How does that work?
Well, run is to name it, right? I mean, I wrote a LinkedIn post recently that got a fair amount of traction, which came from a kind of conversation I had with someone about the baby thing. I'm like, there's two kinds of business parents, like kind of the foster parent, I call that, the person who goes in, like maybe this is a SaaS developer. I'm going to call him he goes in knowing he's going to build this thing, and as soon as he can, he's going to sell it. That's the reason he did it, versus the birth parent who goes into something because she loves it. She gets to work on something she loves with clients that she loves, with colleagues that she loves. And her whole identity may be wrapped up in this business. Her social network may be there. It's not just a source of income for her. And so the thought of selling that business that she gave birth to is a whole different thing. And so she needs, in order for her to get to the point of thinking about selling it, it almost feels like a betrayal to her clients, betrayal to her employees to even be thinking about selling the business, which is not something that the foster parent goes through. And so talking about how it's okay to want to build wealth, to think about the things that you can do with it. Think about the benefit that could come from it for your family, for your community. And also to have a really clear picture about those benefits. And that kind of helps her get more comfortable with the idea of building wealth. That's not a dirty word. That wealth is empowerment, right? It is a way to make change and to make impact. And so kind of looking at it from that angle instead of just like, let me get the highest valuation. It's not just about that. So
yeah. I think a lot of times it's like the startup world versus everybody else. And so
yeah.
it's super generic.
Yeah. We can generalize a little bit.
Super generalized. But generally the startup world is the world where you could be a startup, you could be a female or a male founder there, but it's where you are starting a business. And the whole idea is to get investors, and hopefully someone's going to buy that business in a few years for tons of money. That's generically the idea behind all that. And so I feel like you're right. And I like how you have actually identified the birth parent business, like the birth business, the baby, and then the foster business, because it's true. And but I don't know, like, and maybe this is just me because my business was not, mine's a birth business and not a foster business in that sense. Not to say in the future, if there is opportunity that seems a good fit, that might not happen. But I wonder, like, every time I've spoken to any type of startup companies, I really consider the value system very important. I think it's very important to talk about values in a business. I think it's very important to align your values to how your business is functioning and how you're functioning. And so I wonder, like, if there might be some type of emotional attachment, though, even before you make that sale, like, who's buying my business? Are they going to further it in a way that aligns with my ethos, my values? So do you come across that also, or?
Yes, absolutely. So, when you are, in love, literally in love with your business, with your clients, with your employees, it's super important to you, like, what happens to it after. It's not just about getting your check and running off into the sunset. It is really making sure that they are taken care of. And so, that is very different from, say, the startup culture where you want to just sell to the highest bidder, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the best terms are. And so, that's absolutely an important point for sure.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right. The startup culture is a bit different. It's still new. It's not new, but it's, more awareness is coming to that industry, I guess, if you want to call it that. But yeah, it's just, it puts in so many different elements to the way business is being run as well.
Right.
So if there is somebody that comes to you today and it's like, hey, how do I figure this out? I don't even know where to start. Like, where would you tell them to start?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do have a worksheet that helps me do that. So I have put together a worksheet. It is called "Is There Rembrandt in Your Attic?" And it basically is a way for them to, like, an initial self-assessment to get them thinking about ways that they can, like, one, what type of assets might they have in their business? So they start thinking about them other than, the books and the software types of assets. And also helps them think about ways to start leveraging those assets. One of the things in the service-based business, if you're billing by the hour, you can't scale billing by the hour, right? The only way to make more money is to work more, right? And so one of the things I work with my clients is finding, tweaking their business model so that they can find a way to start leveraging. So, either finding ways to use less expensive labor, either through automation or through delegation. And that starts with developing processes that you can help, other people do things, or to have, different types of pricing strategies that may be value-based or, performance-based, and, or finding ways to create something that you can teach others to do, and so then you have a licensing model. So there's so that is what the "Is There Rembrandt in Your Attic" worksheet goes through. And really my focus is about, again, building wealth, not for yourself, for sure, while you're still running your business, but the things that develop value for you are the same things that a potential acquirer would value. So a potential acquirer wants to know, if I take your business, like, how will it fit with my business? Like, they're buying the future of your business, not what you're currently doing. And so they're making the calculation of, should I buy someone else's business or should I build it in-house? And so the things that we're looking for are those things that make them go, I want to buy, instead of building it myself.
So what are yeah, no, that was such a great explanation. So what are some of the things that they're looking for?
Yeah, well, they're looking for things that have maybe recurring revenue, and it could be systems as well. Like, if you have a really strong positioning, and that is really what's going to make the difference when you're a service-based business, that you generally will have a process of doing something that is particular to that niche, right? So if you build websites for graphic designers, they build their own, for, and so you have developed a process for that is really efficient everyone in the market knows if you need a website, then you go to her to get it. That's the kind of thing that, say you are an advertising agency and you are currently outsourcing this service because you don't have it in-house. And when you are known for having like that, being the person for that, that makes you a very attractive target for them. Mm-hmm. So having processes, having strong positioning, your branding, if you have insights, let's say you're in a niche, you've been doing it for 10 years, even though you're not actually selling these insights, but over the years you use internally for your own processes, because you've been working with these clients in this industry with these problems for the last 10 years, you have a wealth of information internally about the best way to serve that market. That has value to somebody else, right? That would take them 10 years to develop it, or they can buy yours, So even things that aren't client facing can still have a lot of value because you're using them internally to develop and provide value to your clients. And those are the kinds of things that can be very valuable to an acquirer.
Yeah. Oh, so much to think about. I love that. Yeah. I think there's a lot that we as business owners don't consider to be of value, but truly you're selling the future of your business, not what you have done or what you are doing currently.
Right. So how have we packaged it in a way that it can provide value to a third party without your head, because you don't want to go with it because then you just get a job, right?
Right.
So you want to be able to have somebody else be able to take what you've built and continue to create value. And so that's why we need to package it. That's the idea behind that: identifying, developing, protecting the assets.
That's such a great idea. So much good information right now. So if you were, what are some of your tips on just right now, if somebody needed to start doing something right now, what are some of your tips on how to protect your assets?
Oh,
I know that's probably a fully loaded question for you.
It's actually not. It is so simple. It is use contracts. And it is, and again, they don't have to be treatises. They can be, 1 or 2 page, statements of work that simply make clear, what the deliverable is, who owns what rights in them. And so I look at it not as something contentious, like, oh, they're going to be angry if I send it to them. It like helps clarify, make sure you're both on the same page. If there's something that they don't agree with, isn't it better to know that before you start than after you've delivered, right?
Right.
And so, there should, for people to not be afraid of agreements, I would, be really encourage that. And the other thing is to get Eno Insurance, which is also called errors and omissions insurance, which is, especially if you're creating content that, things happen. And if in the event, you have some exposure for something that you've written and that somebody claims is theirs, that you have those protections, or you have a client who's unhappy with something that you did, that you have those protections. And it's not super expensive. It's not free, but it's not, it's less than your car insurance.
Does it come with a regular business insurance? The Eno?
No, general liability insurance kind of handles like physical property or personal injury. So if something happens to your computer or someone slips and falls in your office. But to handle the deliverables, that's your Eno for the liability that may attach to your deliverables or your activities.
Love that. So getting a contract that identifies the deliverables, but also who owns what. So important. Getting Eno Insurance.
Those would be my first. And I would say, this is what I encourage my clients, is to pick a niche. Like, it doesn't mean you don't work for anybody else, but it is so much easier to rise above the noise when you become the go-to person for X, and when you build that kind of expertise in, construction, working with construction companies or working with stay-at-home moms or whatever it may be, it doesn't mean you can't also work with stay-at-home dads or working moms that also have, or with engineers and architects. But to have when you have a niche, it lets you really kind of speak their language, know where they are, go to where they are, meet them where they are. And it just makes everything easier. So that would be also, it's not a legal tip, but it is it is part of my consulting is we work on.
And I think that's the thing, I guess, I don't know, I guess even in my practice, I give a lot of tips that are not legal. And the only reason is because it's very holistic. Again, you cannot silo legal and finances and business operations. They kind of all work very much together. And you need to be able to find that synergy in your business. So they're all working towards the same common goals.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's wonderful. And I think another thing that you kept mentioning over and over again was also getting your operations, standardizing your operations. So standard operating procedures, like whatever SOPs. And so which I think is so important anyways, because it allows you to not be in your business. Then one person is not super indispensable in the sense of you may love them, you may love their overall energy and everything, but if they decide to leave or they need to leave, that position is not at their disposal at that point.
I mean, those SOPs help you currently increase your profit, right? Because it helps you deliver more efficiently. And I'm absolutely, most of us are guilty of this who have expertise-based businesses. There's some things I can just do, it's in my head, but it does take some bandwidth for me to make sure I'm thinking through everything every time. If I don't have a list next to me, let's say I'm reviewing a 100-page master services agreement. And if I have a list of knowing these are the things I absolutely need to positively make sure I cover, then that's just happening without me going, okay, what next? And, one, you're less likely to make errors, you're less likely to miss something, and you can do it more efficiently. And if I wanted to build my legal side of my business, that list I could hand over to an associate so that they could do it. And that's the way you build a sustainable business, and that can be scaled. So, and then, if at the end of your time with your business, you want to sell it, those SOPs help your acquirer, get the same value of what you've been doing. So
exactly. I love SOPs. It does take time to create them, but once you've created them, it's not like they can't be tweaked here and there as time goes, but at least you've done it. And you also have you feel so much better about your system also. And you're able to see where the gaps are, the holes might be. And you're like, okay, I really need to make this better. So it really helps you evaluate your business while you're doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. There seems like the market now has a few tools. We talked about tools, I think, before we started recording, and that help you develop processes and things. And I've just been looking at a few of them. I haven't kind of picked one out yet. I don't know. Right now I'm an Excel spreadsheeter, but I think that some people have had.
What tools are you looking at?
Well, Process Street is the main one. And I think Pipely, I might have that wrong, but I think it's called Pipely, or a couple that
I haven't looked at any of these. I've just been creating my own, and I might be sometimes it's just good not to reinvent the wheel. It just kind of follow somebody else's direction.
I know.
But okay, that's good to know. It's I always ask my guests, hey, what are your favorite business tools? And so we're just skipping through that right now. But overall, I think you've shared such great information and also so much wisdom about why it's important to know your assets in your business, but then also being able to figure out how to right now protect it. What some of the action items you can do right now is making sure you have the right contracts in place, reading those contracts, understanding those contracts, please, especially if they're your own, please read them. And the Eno Insurance, I love that. And then pick a niche and the SOPs. That's just all such great advice. So one thing I always ask my guests is, what is your anchor when things are just seem like they're falling apart? What holds you steady?
Wow. I am a one day at a timer, but I happen to live in a really beautiful place. I'm very lucky in that way. And I stay grounded by just getting out and sunshine and enjoying the outdoors. When things feel like they're getting out of control, usually that means some exercise is required. And here's a tip I received recently, because I had a bad habit of having like just all like every time there's a tab, on my browser, tab. I might have 50 tabs, and all those things were always on my head, like in my brain somewhere, like because they were unresolved. And to just have one tab open and just have a spreadsheet where you track everything, like just go through all these things, put them down on a spreadsheet, and close the tab, and prioritize them. And it's like clearing your desk. It's like the equivalent of like cleaning your desk or cleaning your office. And it has been it's been actually a game changer for me to like not constantly have those kind of unfinished business, staring me in the face at the top of my computer all day long. So that would be one of my strategies for kind of reeling in a little bit of the madness.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm so notorious for having like a bazillion tabs open.
Yes.
And you're right. It's clutter at the end of the day. And so when you see clutter, it starts cluttering here and you can't think straight.
Yes.
So 110%. I agree with that. So we were talking earlier about some tools, business tools, and I know that you're looking into some of the systems and processes tools, but what are some tools that you are using currently in your business that are just fantastic?
Yeah, well, Zoom, but my main, I'm still fairly wedded to MS Office. And it's one of those things you have to pry out of my cold, dead hands. I occasionally, I'm starting to use Google Office, Google Business. I don't know what it's called. Google, the tool, business tools, some. But I still find, Word and Excel and those things, I get them, they get me. And so they're still my favorite things to use. I use ClickUp is my project management tool. I find it to be fairly complicated, maybe too complicated, but my VA recommended it to me. So that's what we use. And she's way better at it than I am. I think about, honestly, some other tools than that, but to the extent I'm not getting what I should out of ClickUp, that's on me. And then I use ConvertKit for my email newsletter. And and LinkedIn, I mean, if that's a tool, but that's where I am, that's where I hang out. So I think LinkedIn would be my primary tool.
Wonderful. So I know you hang out at LinkedIn. So if somebody wanted to contact you on LinkedIn, what is your handle?
Yeah, Erin Austin, because I've been there so long that I am.
You were able to grab that.
Oh, I don't think anyone else was on it when I got it. So it is just Erin Austin.
The highly coveted full name handles.
Yes.
Awesome. And then what is your website?
My website is thinkbeyondip.com. And there you can get a free copy of my Is There a Rembrandt in Your Attic download. And there's some other freebies in there too.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to have all of this information on the show notes as well. So, if anybody is looking into it, they can contact you. And if you had to give a book suggestion to others, whether it's personal, business related, whatever, what would that be?
The book would be The Business of Authority by David C. Baker. And like I says, I mean, it really talks about kind of how to get, your positioning and the importance of a niche, how to kind of compete with the big guys. And the other one is not a book, but it is a podcast called The Business of Authority, where again, I mean, they're just talking about like how to create a business that is expertise, authority-based business. And both of them I find to be super, super valuable.
Oh, awesome. Are they both related to one another, or are they?
No, they're not actually. Yeah. David C. Baker does have a podcast, but it is very focused on agencies.
Awesome.
Business of authority is more general. Yeah.
Well, Erin, I had so much fun chatting with you. I loved it. So it was so fun, so easy.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm just so happy you were here with us today, sharing all of your gems of knowledge. And I just look forward to continuing our conversations again. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining Law Chat with Girija. I just love these kind of conversations that are motivating, inspiring, but truthful, raw, and honest about all of the challenges, all of the victories, all of the triumphs, picking ourselves back up again. I just can't think of a better way to get mentorship but Law Chat with Girija. If this was helpful to you or this was inspiring to you, please share the love. You can give this video a thumbs up. You can subscribe to this channel. You can also share this with your community by taking a screenshot and posting it on your social media and tagging GBP Law. When you do that, a lot more people will be able to see this video that not only benefited you, but also can benefit them as well. So let's share that love and let's share that inspiration. And if you want more information about what I do and other resources, go check out gbplaw.com or yourcontractbuddy.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.